Hi everyone, it's Alia or Cake Legend from TikTok, and today we're going to be making these pumpkin spice latte bombs inspired by the hot chocolate bombs that were trending last year. So to start out, we're going to melt some white chocolate. I just used chocolate chips and I didn't add any oil to the mixture because I wanted it to firm up really nicely once it's put in the molds. After that, I grabbed my silicone mold and filled each of the cavities with white chocolate. You want to make sure that the shells are thin, but not so thin that they'll crack easily or melt at the touch of your finger. Basically, you want to put enough chocolate that you can only just not see the mold through the coating, if that makes sense. Basically, if you can still see the mold, just put a little bit more chocolate on top so that you can no longer see it. And make sure your coating's not so thick because otherwise it's going to take a long time to melt and it's not going to look nice when you put both halves together. And as you can see, I just used a spoon to apply the chocolate, but I've seen some people use pastry brushes. So whatever works for you. I just find the spoon is easier and easier to clean after, so that's what I do. I used the back of the spoon to just spread it around the entire thing in like one swoopy kind of motion, and then I just use like the tip, as you can see here, to kind of like take some out if there's too much, or put a little bit more on and get it right up to the edges as well. That's another important thing too, to make sure the chocolate comes all the way up to the top edge so that the two halves can come together nicely. So once you have everything coated, you can pop them in the freezer, and then we're going to get started on the filling. Start by measuring out 60 grams of pumpkin puree into a bowl. For the spices, you can really add whatever you want, but I did 6 grams of pumpkin spice, then 6 grams of cinnamon, and 4 grams of nutmeg. And then I added just a little splash of vanilla and mixed it all together. It formed a thick paste kind of texture. Then I set that aside and took my shells out of the freezer and began to take them out of the mold. You have to be so careful during this step so that the shells don't break. But even if they do, you can just melt them down again and do it all over. To remove the shells from the molds, gently pull on the sides while pushing on the bottom at the same time, and it will slowly just peel away. Now to clean up the rough edge, we're going to heat a pan on the stove until it's warm and then take it off. Then we're going to take our shell and literally just press it on there for a second. This footage isn't sped up, you just want to be that quick. So again, take your shell and then press that rough edge on the pan for just 1 second. Take it off and voila! Another important thing to keep in mind is that you want to keep your shells cool. So once I took mine out of the mold, I put them in the fridge and then took the other 6 out of the second mold and then kept those all in the fridge until the pan was ready to go. So after cleaning up the edges on all the bottom halves, we can go ahead and fill them up with our pumpkin mixture. Honestly, I just eyeballed this part, but if you wanted to be precise, I think each one would be filled with about 13 or 14 grams. Once those were ready to go, I put them back in the fridge while I heated up my pan, and then I took out everything and began to assemble the bombs. We're basically doing the same thing as before, except instead of just putting it on the plate, we're attaching it to the bottom half with the pumpkin filling. So again, you want to have both halves ready, take the top half and put it on the pan for just a second, and then take it off and attach it to the bottom. You do have to be quick and gentle here because you have to do this while the chocolate's melted, but you also have to be careful so that you don't break the shells. And once everything is assembled, you can get to the fun part, which is the decorating. This is when you can be creative and do whatever your heart desires. So I did an orange chocolate drizzle on these two and topped them off with sprinkles. Then I did the same thing for another two, but with a white drizzle. And on the last two, I did a white drizzle and sifted some cinnamon on top of them and finished it off with some chocolate vermicelli sprinkles. And then they were all done. And that's how I made these pumpkin spice latte bombs. I hope you guys all enjoyed this tutorial, and if you try these out, be sure to tag me on Instagram or TikTok. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Bye!